I must take this opportunity of thanking you for coming over here to share your thoughts with us. I have no doubt to tell you the normal procedure that we follow at this commission. You are entitled to make your submissions either in public or in camera. The choice is yours. At the conclusion of your representation, the commissioners are entitled to ask you questions that are representation or any matter that is relevant to the body. You are entitled to respond.
My representations are framed by my understanding of the teachings of Siddhartha Gautama, in particular the Charter on Free Inquiry, the Kalama Sutra. As such, I would hope that my submissions privilege reason over emotion and moreover call for the same privileging in the matter of learning lessons and imagining and implementing measures of reconciliation, subject to the condition that conclusions drawn are regularly verified in practice and adjusted in accordance to flaws discerned. My appeal is further framed by the two principal drivers, with my knowledge, proposed by the Buddha: wisdom and compassion. Reconciliation connotes a bridging of difference, a coming together. It assumes, therefore, disjuncture, disunity, dissatisfaction, and disagreement. In the matter at hand, the operative term would be grievance. I am of the view that if grievance is perceived, then it is real. Grievances can, of course, be imagined, but to the extent that even such constructions factor into real-life politics and provoke outcomes, they need to be treated as real for the aggrieved. To the extent that such grievances are felt by a citizen, then it is incumbent on the state to ensure that there is a mechanism to address these grievances, ascertain their true dimensions, and deliver redress. Grievances, as articulated by Tamil representatives, self-appointed or otherwise, are broadly of two kinds: those pertaining to claims regarding traditional homelands, and others about inequalities or anomalies pertaining to citizenship. Let me start with the claims about traditional homelands. On February 14, 1766, Kirtisri Rajasingha, the king of the Kandyan kingdom, ceded a stretch of land in the eastern part of the island, 10 miles in width from the coast, to the Dutch East India Company. The relevant maps are contained in Father S.G. Pereira's The History of Ceylon. Professor James Crawford refers to this treaty in his book, The Creation of States in International Law, as one of the earliest such agreements recorded. Professor Arsaratnam's work on the Dutch period refers to the details of this treaty and points to the issues pertaining to sovereignty. The implication is that the Kandyan kingdom had the right to cede that portion of land, and that it continued to have sovereignty over the rest of the territory until the British obtained full control in 1815. In 1766, therefore, there was no question of sovereignty of any other polity, and when the relinquished sovereignty was recovered and reasserted in 1948 by the state of Ceylon, it naturally reverted to the political geography prior to the signing of that treaty. That treaty, moreover, is the genesis, I believe, of the demographic realities of today's eastern province, where the bulk of the Tamil population lives on that 10-mile wide strip of coastal land. Their ancestors, most of the ancestors, I believe, were brought there by the Dutch to grow tobacco. Even today, the majority of the Gramildari divisions contain a Sinhala majority population. If the issue of homeland, traditional homelands, claims thereof, requires a longer throwback into the past, we can go to the 10th century, to the golden period of Chola expansion and the invasion of the island by Rajaraja Chola in the year 993. Rajaraja Chola is also known as a builder of Hindu temples from wealth plundered from lands that he conquered, invaded. The inscriptions at these places, according to the Archaeological Survey of India, resolve all doubts about traditional homelands and sovereignty, in my opinion. The inscriptions at the temples of Tanjavur and Ukka speak in glorifying vein that Rajaraja Chola conquered many countries, including one called Ilamandalam. The inscription elaborates that this, and I quote, was the country of the warlike Sinhalas, unquote. The plunder of wealth, one notes, is not from Sinhalas who lived in Ilamandal, but the land of the Sinhalas, whether they were warlike or not, being irrelevant to the issue. Now, this is not a minute penned by some interfering foreigner, ignorant of realities. It is not a line taken from the much vilified Mahavansa, which all its vilification remains one of the main sources of collaboration in figuring out what happened in the past in this part of the world. It was authored by a conqueror. He didn't have any stake in lying about what he had done. He spoke of it in terms of glory, self-glorification, and it was recorded as such, and that needs to be taken note of. The archaeological evidence shows that what is today called the northern and eastern province were at one time the heartland of Buddhist civilization in the island. Although there have been claims that these were the work of Tamil Buddhists, that thesis is not supported outside of the rhetoric. I conclude then that the claim is a fiction, and one which is not only a key element of Tamil chauvinistic propaganda, but a notion that stands squarely in opposition to reconciliation among communities. Whether or not the fictionalizing was provoked by citizenship anomalies or racism and chauvinism on the part of the counterpart community is not relevant to the issue. I submit, however, that to the extent that history is version, there is a manifest need to have the issue cleared once and for all so that there are no doubts regarding the issue of sovereignty. I propose that a historic audit be administered where all claimants are required to provide adequate substantiation, divested of rhetoric, but buttressed by independent authority and corroboration. History is version, but one Melissa is not a church. I submit that reconciliation requires a resolution of competing theories about exclusive rights to territories, while offering the caution that the notion of ethnic enclaves rebels against reconciliation and moreover is not supported by demographic and geographical realities. In this regard, let me speak to the much bandied term pertaining to resolution, that is devolution, and within it, the 13th Amendment to the Constitution. I submit that devolution as a constitutional and political mechanism for resolution makes sense only if history, geography, demography, and economic development prerogatives support it. I submit that devolution fails on all counts, and as such, the 13th Amendment is an aberration for all these reasons, not to mention its illegality, its violation of democratic spirit in enactment and implementation, and delivery failure. Even if ethnic enclaves do not exacerbate mutual suspicion among communities, they need to exist for devolution to sit in concord with reconciliation. The demographic reality is that the majority of Tamils live outside the northern and eastern provinces, and this fact cannot be attributed to the conflict alone. The geographical reality includes the fact that in the eastern province, that majority of the land area is inhabited by communities where the Sinhalese form the vast majority. Devolution, as per the 13th Amendment, has been proven an economic and political failure, with 2/3 of funds allocated being spent on maintaining political structures, with the benefits accruing in proportions horrendously skewed in favor of politicians. Devolution, moreover, rebels against current economic thinking on development. The unequal distribution of resources does not support development models that envisage multiple economic and commercial hubs. Devolution, if its logic is played out to the end, could, for example, result in vast regional anomalies, with the western province, for example, objecting to surpluses generated therein being handed out to non-performing or less affluent provinces. Accordingly, I submit that the 13th Amendment be reviewed in its entirety, especially on its predicate, that of claimed grievances. If grievances pertaining to territory are found untenable, then all territory-based proposals I submit are unscientific and therefore require rejection. A pandering to political realities based on constructed mythologies can tide the country over in the short term, but necessarily generate further rupture down the line. Constitutional enactment should not be frivolous and should not pander to the whims of the most skillful rhetorician. It should rather be sober, realistic, reference the past, and look to the future. My contention is that the traditional homeland thesis is flawed and therefore resolution on relevant lines doomed to failure. In the absence of a robust case for devolution, minority grievances must necessarily defer to the notion of citizenship. Let me therefore comment on the second element of the grievance thesis, that of citizenship anomalies. I have no doubt in my mind that there have been numerous instances where minorities, particularly Tamils, have suffered injustice and been at the wrong end of citizenship anomalies in terms of access to services, language-related obstacles, and opportunities. In many instances, constitutional provision has proven inadequate in resolving inequalities. Sloth, lack of political will, inefficiency, lack of resources, including skilled personnel, and also racism, have resulted in ensuring that minorities are shortchanged in many areas of social, economic, and political life. Let me